Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to part 2 of the Week 15 and 16 Studs and Duds, recapping the risers and fallers from a player perspective from NFL Weeks 15 and 16 in the AFC side. We're going to be going team by team, alphabetically by the first letter of each team. And before we get started, please do hit that like button down below and share the video with any football fans out there that you know that you think would enjoy this series and the channel. It would really help me out and be a great way to show your support. All right, here we go, starting with the star of the weeks in the AFC. It's going to be Stefon Diggs, wide receiver for the Buffalo Bills. No doubt this trade was kind of a win-win for both parties, Vikings and Bills. Vikings get Justin Jefferson and the Bills get Stefon Diggs, establishing himself as one of the top receivers in the NFL. He was already in that conversation, but in this high-volume passing offense, his separation ability proving yet again that separation is king. I honestly feel kind of bad. It was either in Studs and Duds or in the podcast this week. I was mentioning the top route runners in the league, and I failed to mention Stefon Diggs, who was very clearly in that conversation with your Devontae Adams, Amari Cooper, and the likes of those guys to be considered the best route runner in the NFL. His ball skills are more than good enough. His run after catch ability, exceptional. He's just been, simply put, a big part of Josh Allen's development because he's open so consistently. It just makes the processing part of the game that much easier for Josh Allen. So Stefon Diggs, some well-deserved respect over the last couple of weeks as the Bills offense continues to just hum. Then the dud of the week, Cam Newton, Patriots quarterback. And I'm not going to lie, man, I bought in after that Seahawks game. I came out with a very hard stance against Cam Newton, probably harder than any analyst out there that you'll find. And I basically said he's not going to quarterback anymore. There's a reason he's not signed anymore. He can't push the ball downfield. His throwing mechanics are wonky. And for literally every start this season, other than the Seahawks game, that's been the case. But I gave him a massive boost after that Seahawks game because I was willing to admit I was wrong because he was that good in that game. And the vertical accuracy was the reason I made that change, because it seemed, okay, maybe he is healthy all of a sudden. Because we know Cam Newton, when he was in his prime, was an excellent quarterback. But the reality is he just isn't that guy anymore. He has been virtually the exact guy that I predicted he would be. He is now basically back with a slight bump. I think I had him at a 71 to start the year. He's now 72. He has been solid for the Patriots, all things considered. It's not all his fault, obviously. The weapons in New England are not good, but paired with his inability to push the ball downfield, he just can't go outside the numbers 20 plus yards. It's as simple as that. He's extremely limited as a passer, and he needs to come down. He's in this tier of certainly starting caliber quarterbacks, but kind of let's just say in the tier of like journeyman guys with like Foles, Dalton, Bridgewater, like quarterbacks that you're never going to feel good about them as your number one quarterback. So Stefon Diggs and Cam Newton, a AFC East intensive star and dud of the weeks, plural. Okay, let's get into the team-by-team breakdown, starting with the Cincinnati Bengals, the red-hot Cincinnati Bengals. Quarterback Brandon Allen impressing, showing that he looks like he can be a capable backup that is comfortable in this scheme. He's a solid athlete, can get on the move. Shout out to Zach Taylor for scheming up some really nice looks for Brandon Allen and putting up one of the quarterback performances. Gosh, there's been a lot of great quarterback performances this year, so I don't want to say one of the quarterback performances of the year, but just all in all, an all-star performance from Brandon Allen this week, slinging the ball all around the yard, grading out well, lighting up the stat sheet. Can't really say enough. Is it sustainable for him? Very unlikely, but fun to see a player like him shine. Granted, against the Texans defense. Then Xavier Su'a-Filo, he has been getting a lot more starts lately. Was not in the lineup earlier in the year, but he's been a nice improvement at that guard spot. Much needed. Would have been nice to have him in there pre-Joe Burrow injury, because Michael Jordan, who probably should not be anywhere near an NFL lineup, let alone maybe an XFL lineup, was the reason Joe Burrow suffered that significant knee injury. So you wish he would have been in there a little earlier, but it is what it is. Maybe he can provide a quality guard for them into next season. And then Samaje Perine, pleasant surprise for this Bengals team when Joe Mixon went down, it was really just Giovanni Bernard and what looked like no true power running threat. And Samaje Perine, another player in the league that is having a breakout season in the year that his brother entered the league. We talked about Romeo Okwara yesterday, but Samaje Perine trying to be the better Perine in the NFL after LaMichael was drafted by the Jets, and at this point in time, he certainly is. He is a freak athlete. I think he's also... Is he still the record holder for the most rushing yards in an NCAA game against Kansas? I could be wrong about that, but he then came out and benched like crazy amounts of reps. He's an interesting player, and I think he deserves a spot on this team next year, absolutely, to provide depth. And then on the defense, Carl Lawson. I mentioned in yesterday's Studs and Duds that I plan on doing a breakout video, a final year of your contract breakout. We talk so much about contract years and how it can inspire players to play well, and Carl Lawson is one of those guys. He's had an interesting career. He fell in the draft because of significant injury concerns, and those injury concerns have proved to be legitimate. He's been on and off the field throughout his career, but he has stayed healthy this season, which is definitely piquing teams' interest. He's been, let's just say, a very good pass rusher. I'm not going to go like top 10 or anything, but I love his skill set. He was one of my favorite players in that draft if he could just stay healthy. He's a guy that can convert speed to power and has a lot of finesse to his game. So Carl Lawson going up, as well as Sam Hubbard. He has stepped up, now getting full-time starter reps after the Carlos Dunlap trade. He's just a powerful, big-bodied edge defender, very good against the run. You know Ohio State knows how to coach these guys up. Not the most athletically gifted player in the entire world, but as a number 2 to Carl Lawson, you could do worse than this edge duo moving forward, but contractually, you got to figure these guys out. And then Darius Phillips at that corner spot, another corner who is quote-unquote undersized, stepping outside. I do think he clears the 5'10" threshold at least, but coming out of Western Michigan did fall because he's not a bigger corner, but proving again that movement skills, technique, and just general game feel and awareness is much more important than length, and Darius Phillips has been awesome over the last couple weeks for the Bengals, starting outside with Alexander in the slot, William Jackson. It's not a bad secondary here, and then Von Bell. It's been a nice signing. He's been a slight upgrade to what they've had in Sean Williams over the years. He's provided youth and burst, and he's been one of the most secure tacklers in the NFL. He's still a limited typical box safety, kind of in that dime a dozen category, but he's one of the better ones in that category. Next, on to the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen is going to go up again. The more and more consistency he shows, the more faith you're going to have in him. You're going to be hesitant in a guy that showed 2 years with the consistent level of bad mistakes that he made, whether it was poor processing or decision-making out of structure, but it just hasn't shown up really throughout the course of the season, and he really does seem to have turned a corner here as far as the way he sees the game, and it's well-earned boosting here. He's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL at this point in time, in my opinion. So Josh Allen, more continued respect here. And then Stephon Diggs going up. We talked about him. And then the offensive line getting some respect as well. Bills fans were in outcry after I did not boost him after a good game against TJ Watt. Well, here you go, +2 the last couple weeks, continuing to dominate. Another contract year breakout. He's had a roller coaster career, but he is healthy and, in my opinion, is well deserving of a $16+ million contract. He is one of the premier right tackles in the NFL, and he has been an underrated reason why the Bills have had so much success this season. And John Feliciano kicking back over to right guard now that they have Mitch Morse healthy at center. This is where Feliciano is most comfortable, just where he doesn't have to necessarily focus on the pass protection schemes and snapping the ball. He can really fire off the ball at guard and be that premier run blocker that he frankly is. This was such a great find by the Bills. So just overall, this front office has done such a phenomenal job finding guys like Williams and Feliciano. Most teams don't find high caliber offensive linemen off the scrap heap. and the Buffalo Bills have, and it's just been that and the Diggs. Like, just everything they do has done such a great job to help develop Josh Allen. You can't say enough about it. But then on the defensive side of the ball, some notes on the defensive line. So Justin Zimmer, another good pickup here, kind of a tweener type, can play some 3-tech, has some burst, some power, can do a little bit of everything as a mismatch problem there. And then AJ Epinesa, not going to get a boost this week because I do like him, but he has been much more steady, much more consistent. A younger player coming out of Iowa, seems to have adjusted to the speed of the game in a tough COVID season for rookies. So I think AJ Epinesa's career trajectory is well on track and will continue to show development and get some boosts here in the future. Teron Johnson, slot corner for the Bills, has had a great month. It started with that pick 6 against Big Ben several weeks ago, and he has maintained that steady coverage ability. He's been a great tackler there, and reestablishing himself as a quality starter, slot corner, as he was a couple years ago after a down year last year. Then for the Denver Broncos, a couple guys dropping on the offense, and they're both rookies. So Jerry Jeudy, kind of pains me to say it because I see the tape. I see him just roasting cornerbacks and leaving them in the dirt, but it's the hands that have been an issue. 6 drops in the last 2 weeks, 5 against the Chargers, and it's an issue. It was something that did show up at Alabama. You would hope that it wouldn't plague him into the NFL, but he is right there with like Deontay Johnson. I think he has 12 drops on the season. It's just something he needs to work on. I think he will. Just needs to hit the jugs machine. I'm not too worried about it, but I think this was certainly warranted based on the lack of production and the amount of drops. And then Lloyd Cushenberry, quietly what's looking like a good draft call for me. There was a lot of people very high on Lloyd Cushenberry and thought this was a phenomenal draft pick. I definitely didn't see it. I didn't see the dominance throughout the season. I saw him giving up a lot of pressure up the middle, and I saw him get absolutely dominated by Derek Brown, granted one of the better players, but definitely concerning. And he's come in and seen similar competition to what he saw in Derek Brown and has not held his own. He does not look like a starting caliber center at this point in time. Maybe he gets there, but yeah, quietly looking like a solid draft call by me to be much lower than consensus on Lloyd Cushenberry. Then on the defense, Deshaun Williams continues to go up. He's even making an impact as a pass rusher, all things considered. He's a rotational player, but when called upon in pass rushing snaps, he's been serviceable, generating some push. And then another good draft call here, Draymond Jones. I loved him in that draft class. I had even mocked him at times in the first round, late in the first round to specific scheme fits. But you see the get-off he had at Ohio State and the athleticism that he has at 21 years old. I just got excited about him. And to put him here with Vic Fangio, I couldn't imagine a much better coach to develop a Draymond Jones who obviously did need to work on his game and convert some of that get-off into more power. But he has been a very steady pass-rushing force for this team. And, you get excited about Draymond Jones with some of the highlights he's got. And if he can establish that consistency and continue to develop, he has tremendous upside as that kind of hybrid defensive end, a guy that'll kick inside on pass rush downs. I wouldn't even mind him in a 4-3 scheme to play some true defensive end against the run. But yeah, he's just a very explosive player and someone I get excited about. Then for the Cleveland Browns, just one player moving here. It's going to be Sione Takitaki. He's been a excellent run defender as that weak side linebacker. He's played a serviceable role in coverage as well as far as being that flat defender, taking care of business towards the sideline. He's got sneaky speed. He's very powerful. I think he's a good player in the role he plays. Now, you do see him struggle to keep up to guys like Lamar Jackson, and he's not an elite cover linebacker or anything, but he's been a good replacement in this linebacker group that has actually had a bunch of guys kind of step up here with some different skill sets as they lost Schobert and Kirksey and that group of guys. Then for the LA Chargers, actually we're not going to move on quite yet. I have a note on David Njoku on the offense. He's had a nice month of blocking for the Cleveland Browns, the best blocking he's done in his career, and he is another guy in a contract season, and the blocking has never been there for David Njoku, but to get that effort out of him is a big deal to me. He's a guy that just has all of the tools to be a Darren Waller, a Kelsey, if you will. Like, he is a freak athlete, great ball skills, but the drops, the lack of blocking, the lack of finesse in his route running, it's a concern because you want to see guys develop this late into their career, and he just has not done it. And I said contract year, he very well might have another year, and that was inaccurate, but you get the point. With David Njoku, let's move on. The LA Chargers, Steven Anderson, tight end, getting limited reps here, but making some big plays in the passing game. An athletic journeyman tight end getting an opportunity here. And then Storm Norton, another good call of mine. You go back to my deep dive on this team. I said, keep an eye on Storm Norton. He dominated in the XFL. He's got length. He's got footwork and technique as a pass protector. And you could make a case that he's actually been this team's best offensive tackle when he's been in there. Limited opportunities, but getting the start over the last couple weeks and looking very solid. So a great pickup for the Chargers. They went for those XFL guys. They got him. Donald Parham has had a nice couple of weeks. So let's get that XFL back as a developmental league. See guys like Storm Norton and Donald Parham make the league a better place. But the rest of this offensive line, ooh-wee, is it an eyesore. The Trey Turner trade, a complete disaster. He is going to go down for the second week in a row. He's been one of the worst guards in all of football. You got to think that athleticism and run blocking ability that he showed in his prime as I want to say he was an all-pro candidate back in his prime. You got to think it's in there somewhere. The injuries have definitely stacked up for him, but it seems to be an effort thing that he's just kind of checked out. And it's just very concerning. Forrest Lamp just has not shown the development that you would have hoped. A guy that's battled injuries, just does not look like the same player as he was coming out of college. Sam Tevi continues to struggle at tackle. He's not the answer there. It's time to give up on Sam Tevi if you're the Chargers. And then Brian Bulaga, he is up there for one of the worst signings of the offseason. Might be another video idea right there. But health, just a serious problem for Brian Bulaga. It was, to me, the reason that the Packers let Brian Bulaga go. Because he's incapable of finishing a season, and it's been even worse here for the Chargers. I did tweet that Brian Bulaga paired with the Chargers medical staff might be the worst duo in the NFL, and that's proved to be true. But -4 because when he has been out there, he actually hasn't been all that great. So still a good player when he can play, but just not a great move there. With Brian Bulaga. You hope he could stay healthy because you do have a starting caliber tackle, but they're just not getting that. There's a lot of excitement between him and Trey Turner coming into the year, and it just has not come to fruition at all. Then for the defense, Justin Jones, really nice development as that physical run defender, not contributing as a pass rusher, your typical run defending defensive tackle, and proven out to contribute to a run defense that needed it. And between him and the veteran from Minnesota, his name's escaping me, Linval Joseph, they have improved that run defense, which has been an eyesore for them for years. And then Jerry Tillery had a hot start to his season, but that seems to have been a fluke, I suppose. Some sack production early on, some pressure production early on, and it just hasn't been replicated. They've been trying to figure out what his true position is between defensive end, defensive tackle. It doesn't seem to matter. He's a miserable run defender. He plays with no gap discipline, can't control block. He is just a bursty player that has not been able to figure out anything in the NFL, and frankly, 70 might be too high still for the first-round pick from 2019. Next up, the Kansas City Chiefs. So Mike Remmers has been an answer at right tackle as Mitchell Schwartz has been out for pretty much the entire season. A guy with really nice technique and can hold his own there on the right side. And then some players dropping for the offense. And I do have a note on Patrick Mahomes, who has had honestly, not the best 3-week stretch here. The big plays are, of course, there. But at what cost is the big plays? Is it giving up structure? Is it dropping too far back in the pocket and hurting your offensive line by putting them in tough positions? And then the turnover-worthy plays are off the wall this year. Obviously Mahomes is incredible, but I really don't think he is playing his best football right now heading into the playoffs. I did not lower him, though, that said, because yes, those flaws are there, but the things he does well are so ridiculous and so impressive and so game-changing that I do have confidence in him to play like the best quarterback in the NFL in the playoffs, even if he hasn't been necessarily the best quarterback in the NFL for the regular season. But some other guys dropping. Mahomes is actually not getting the best help over the last month with some of these guys. The run game is non-existent. Le'Veon Bell is just a shell of his old self. There's some flashes in there. He's not a bad player necessarily. I don't think this is a Todd Gurley situation or anything, but just needs to come down from the glory days of him being the best running back in the NFL. Then Sammy Watkins dropping down 2 as well. The first game of the season for him was false because the rest of the year he just has not been that guy. It's as simple as that. I think he can still play. He'll probably show up in the playoffs because he does seem to make big plays for this team, but the consistency just hasn't been there. He's not a focal point of the offense. He doesn't, he's not an attractive target for Patrick Mahomes. He's just not a premier separator. He doesn't come down with incredible catches. He's not amazing after the catch. He's just a solid receiver, but not worthy of where we had him ranked earlier. And then for the defense, what a rookie class this is looking like. You get Willie Gay finally getting some high-end snaps. Stay with it, Chiefs. Like you need a linebacker like this on this defense to take that linebacking core seriously. He brings the athleticism to contain those sideline runs. If you go against the Ravens, you're going to want Willie Gay on the field. He's one of the few linebackers in the NFL with the speed to catch up to a guy like Lamar Jackson. And the coverage is there. It's boom or bust for him. He's very aggressive. He's going to take risks, but I'd rather have that than, what's the Anthony Hitchens, who's just going to stand there and let defenses abuse him. So I like what I've seen from Willie Gay. He continues to impress me when he plays. And then L'Jarius Sneed, such a great find from this Chiefs. They just take athleticism and find ways to package it, and that's what they've done with both of these players. But L'Jarius Sneed, even more so, almost inarguably at this point, has been the best rookie corner when he's played. Now, he's missed about half the season, but yeah, just the speed and ability to stick to guys, it just stands out with Sneed. Fell in the draft because of being a small school guy and playing safety in his final season, but a total steal for the Kansas City Chiefs, and their front office just continues to get the job done here. Then for the Indianapolis Colts, they've had some big weeks as far as long lists here, but it's not going to be this week. Just one player moving here. It's going to be Khari Willis. Just like what we said about Von Bell, echo everything we said. He's a dime a dozen box safety. Most teams have a guy like this, but he has been one of the most secure tacklers in the league. Just a very disciplined, strong safety. Every team needs a guy like this, and the Colts have a very good one in Khari Willis on a very cheap contract. He's a very valuable player, considering his contract for this Colts defense. Then the Miami Dolphins. A lot of movement here. Tua Tagovailoa is going to be the first one we talk about. I don't want to overreact here. I think he can be a much better player with a better offensive line and a scheme more catered to his skill set and some playmakers that can do some of the things that his receivers at Alabama did for him. But yeah, it's pretty obvious he is not looking great right now. He's struggling to push the ball downfield. The athletic traits, the lack of athletic traits and arm talent more specifically, definitely showing up. And just the decision making, he's forcing balls over the middle that he should have way more interceptions than he does. It's just true. His turnover where he plays, it's unlike anything I've ever seen. The amount of dropped picks that have come at Tua Tagovailoa's benefit. So he's going to come down. I'm not giving up on him by any stretch of the imagination, but that quarterback position is definitely a question mark for the Dolphins heading into 2021. And then some other guys on the offense are going to go up. These running backs, Myles Gaskin, Savon Ahmed, both impressing in different ways. Ahmed more of that full speed ahead, similar to Matt Breida, and showing the ability to create some chunk plays in the run game and make some guys miss. And then Myles Gaskin being more of that steady, smart third down running back, almost the James White for this offense. And yeah, I really like what I've seen from him. He had a really nice play. I can't remember what week it was, but on a reactionary route where Tua was rolling out to his left, and Myles Gaskin, like a lot of receivers aren't capable of doing, found the hole in the zone, got upfield for a huge play in the run game. Just a very smart player, secure hands, and he's showing to be able to make some guys miss too. So Myles Gaskin, Savon Ahmed, showing yet again that running backs, you can find them at a very cheap level. And then Durham Smythe, another Notre Dame in tight end league. Another Notre Dame tight end in this league stepping up. He's been a very nice run blocker. All these guys feel very similar. Cole Kmet, Kyle Rudolph, like they just are big-bodied dudes. They're all like 6'5", 6'6", typical prototype tight ends. They're decent blockers. Rudolph wasn't for a while, but he is now. Secure hands, but just lack the high-end athleticism to be like total mismatch problems. But Durham Smythe getting a good opportunity here as the lead blocking tight end with next to Adam Shaheen as well. They lean a lot on these tight ends here because the receiving group is just not that good. But Robert Hunt's going to go up. He's been a good run blocker for them. He's been okay as a pass protector. I still think long-term he projects better as a guard, but he's been nice at tackle for now. And then Lynn Bowden has been this team's best receiver for a month. Is that fair to say? It's definitely something to point out that he's been very solid. He's been in the slot there. Looks very comfortable. He looks like to me he's beefed up since his days at Kentucky, a little more physical over the middle of the field. His hands have been very solid. That was kind of a question mark as this sort of hybrid guy that played some quarterback, some running back. How confident was he going to be catching the ball over the middle of the field? He looks very solid. Hasn't had necessarily the big plays yet, the massive amount of production, but he's been a reliable target, and I think he's just getting started. He has tremendous upside with his athleticism. And then Austin Jackson's going to go down. He is not looking like the best pick. We're going to give him time for sure. When they drafted him, I definitely pointed out that he has a lot of work to do, that he has a lot of athletic traits, and if he develops, he can become a good player. We've seen tackles have slow starts. We're definitely spoiled by how good this tackle class has been with the four guys taken ahead of Austin Jackson. Austin Jackson's career trajectory much more on path with what you typically see from later first-round picks. So definitely not giving up on him, but he does need to improve. The pass protection there has not been good. And then for the defense, Zach Sealer continues to impress, just making splash plays as that rotational defensive end in this 3-4 scheme. Totally blew up Josh Jacobs on, it was either a 3rd and short or a 4th and short, but it was a game-changing play to get a defensive stop. And it's not just that. He shows up as a pass rusher. He's been steady. Not a full-time starter here, but a great find by the Miami Dolphins. And then Andrew Van Ginkel, he's going to go up as well. Just been that do-it-all outside backer here. He has, to me, had a better year than Kyle Van Noy, but very similar players as that hybrid Belichick outside linebacker here. Doing a little bit of everything, rushing, cover, run defense, you name it. Doing exactly what he did at Wisconsin in that scheme as well. Then Jerome Baker going up, plus 174 to a 75. Just honestly, he struggled early on this season, but he has really settled down. He's making a more reliable impact in coverage, tackling better, making plays in the backfield, just showing up much more. So he's going up. I like Jerome Baker, still a young linebacker in this league. And then Byron Jones is going to go down again. I don't think he's a bad player. He's been a solid corner, but was rated very nicely after the year he had in Dallas. Running a lot more man coverage here in Miami than he was asked to do in Dallas. Guys played a lot of safety, just to me, a guy that's probably more comfortable with his eyes facing the quarterback when he does turn around, might not necessarily have the ability to kind of anticipate those things in man coverage. So just some learning curves here. I still think it was a good signing. I think he's a really nice number 2, but just time to come down a little bit more based on where he was rated. Next up, Trevor Lawrence's Jaguars. Just one player moving here. Doug Costin came out hot early on as that undrafted, undersized interior defensive lineman out of Miami of Ohio, defending the run early on, but he's frankly been more of a liability than anything over the last couple weeks. Teams have been running all over, and with his size and the fact that he was undrafted, it's not a huge surprise. He hasn't been much of a pass rusher, so just a little pump the brakes moment with Doug Costin. Still has some upside to be a rotational or even a starting caliber defensive tackle, but just showing that, maybe not going to be that day one next year. And then for the New York Jets, Mekhi Becton's going to go up. He's had a really nice season. He has proved to be a really nice run blocker here. I did criticize his ability to be a high-level run blocker at the next level. And I'm actually going to stand by my eval on him because I definitely said it. If he's in an inside zone and all he has to do is hit the guy in front of him, run duo, and work up to the next level, he can absolutely do that. It was when he had to go horizontally and get out on outside zone screen plays. That's when I questioned how well he blocked in space. So I'm going to stand by that. I would say that he hasn't proved to be, Trent Williams or anything, but a mauler on inside zone for one of the most inside zone heavy teams with Adam Gase, absolutely. So he's impressed in that department, and the pass protection's been about as good as advertised as well. So Mekhi Becton going up, definitely a find for the Jets in the first round this year. Then onto the defensive side of the ball, talk about finds. The best thing going for the Jets right now is Joe Douglas. I mean, everyone on this list is what you would probably quantify as a steal in one way or another. Mekhi Becton, in close to the mid picks in the first round, a guy that probably belonged in the top 10. John Franklin Myers, they picked him up off of waivers from the Rams, and he has over 50 pressures this year. He's been one of the most effective interior rushers in the entire NFL this year, just out of nowhere. So John Franklin Myers, this defensive line with Myers and Henry Anderson and Quinnen Williams, who's been great, Folorunsho Fadukasi, they have a front to build around at a very cheap cost as well. And then Javelin Guidry, total steal. I still have no freaking idea how he did not get drafted. A guy that played well in an NFL-friendly scheme at a team like Utah that coaches guys up with technique and the ability to, understand route concepts. With his athleticism running in the 4.3s, I just don't get it. I know he's 5'9", but so is like every other good slot corner in the NFL. So I have no idea how Javelin Guidry, let alone went undrafted, but wasn't a third or a fourth round pick, which is about where I projected him to go. That's where I would have drafted him. So, man, I don't get it, but what a find for the New York Jets. I think you can kiss Brian Poole goodbye at this point. Javelin Guidry has been crushing it. His trajectory is only going up for the undrafted rookie. Looks like the next great undrafted slot corner. And at what point in time are teams going to start valuing slot corner at the way that they need to be? The game has evolved, but the evaluation and value that teams put on slot corner just hasn't. So it started with this team getting Brian Poole for basically nothing last year, and now Javelin Guidry. And then Bryce Hall at outside corner falls in the draft because of a COVID season where teams couldn't get the medical evaluations on Bryce Hall, who was coming off a very significant injury. The Jets gamble on him way later than any team should have had to gamble on him. I mean, his tape was first round worthy, especially in a zone heavy scheme like the Jets run here. And yeah, man, it's just, you can't argue with the results. He's been right there with L'Jarius Sneed as far as the best rookie corners in the NFL. So those guys actually coming, third round, fifth round here with Bryce Hall, not your Jeffrey Okudah and CJ Andersons of the world. Well, I don't know if that'll sustain for the rest of their career as far as upside goes. But regardless, Joe Douglas and this front office seem to be very good at finding value in tough places, something the Jets have really struggled at for years. And I trust this team with that number 2 pick to evaluate the quarterback that they want, whether it's Darnold or one of these quarterbacks. And they have a lot of things to build around. They just need a coach as well. So let's move on, staying in the AFC East, to the New England Patriots. We talked about Cam Newton. And then on the defensive side of the ball, just some lower-level guys here. Deshaun Bauer is getting some defensive end reps for this team, doing a little bit of everything. And then Josh Uche, I loved this pick for the Patriots. And I went out on a limb and said that if he were to get the playing time, which was a question mark, I did think that he would provide everything that they were missing from guys like Van Noy and Jamie Collins. And you really can't argue with when Uche is on the field. He's been that guy. I said he's a better pass rusher than either of those guys, certainly, and he has better athletic traits to be a better player in coverage. And he's not getting full-time reps for whatever reason. It's a complicated scheme. Bill Belichick going with the veterans more over a guy like Josh Uche for the most part, but he hasn't been able to keep Uche off the field lately. He's been extremely consistent as a pass rusher, again, when on the field. and he's been able to defend the run, drop into coverage. His upside is phenomenal. I love him in this scheme fit. I even went on a limb and said that he was better than Zach Bond, which was a controversial opinion as well. So Josh Uche crushing it. I think his future is very bright. Yeah, and of course Bond has a chance to be good in his own right, but he is not seeing the field quite yet. So not trying to write off Zach Bond as some bust or anything. I did like him as well. I want that on the record. Let's move on to the Raiders here. Darren Waller got to go up. I mean, the thing that's changing here for me, because we know he's this elite mismatch problem, I think Gruden schemes him up very well. He's a good route runner for a tight end, but I don't think he's some elite route runner, and he's not a premier blocker either. So to get his rating to come up, something has to change, right? Because his athletic traits is what make him so special, and it's not like he's all of a sudden faster. But what has changed here is the hands, coming down with tough catches, the consistent hands as well when he is open. Man, Waller is right in that convo with Kelce and Kittle. There's 3 tight ends on the west coast of this country, if you count the Chiefs, because they play in the AFC West, that are just premier and miles above. I mean, no disrespect to Mark Andrews. He's kind of in that mix as well. But the separation ability of Waller, Kittle, and Kelce, obviously, they're just on a different level as far as headaches and mismatch problems. But the rest of these guys here going down. So Henry Ruggs, again, another player that I'm not giving up on by any stretch of the imagination, but just hasn't been a force for this team. There's been a lot better rookie receivers in year one. For whatever reason, they just haven't been able to get him going. He's had some splash plays for sure, whether it's getting wide open on a crossing route or coming down with that insane catch in traffic that he had. But it is about consistency here, and it just hasn't been there. 0 catches on 2 targets again last week. Just time to come down for Henry Ruggs, and he needs to be more stable if he's going to live up to that top 12 pick that he was. He was the number 1 receiver taken in this insane receiver class. So the bar is pretty high here for Ruggs. He needs to start playing like that pedigree. And then Damon Arnett coming down. Another great draft day combined. I feel like I'm just tooting my horn this whole time. It just kind of worked out this way. But I thought this was the worst pick value-wise in the first round. He was a third-round corner to me, lacked the athletic traits, had good man coverage technique, absolutely, but was not good in zone coverage. And you can see exactly why I said that on the cover 2 play to lose the game against the Dolphins. It's cover 2, prevent, basically. And this one was on Damon Arnett. He was creeping down as if, the Dolphins were going to throw that thing in the flat, and he just lets the receiver, who was it, Mac Hollins, just sneak right behind him. It's just bad awareness. It's bad understanding of your zone assignment and how it impacts the play. And the lack of athleticism has shown up throughout the year as well. He's just not a great corner. There was much better options for the Raiders. They took him because he was tough and was your Gruden grinder type of guy. But again, that has proved to be a colossal mistake and a waste of valuable assets for the Raiders, in my opinion. I don't think you could get a 4th or a 5th round pick for Damon Arnett today if you were to trade him. Then Raekwon McMillan is going to come down as well. Just was kind of waiting to see what he would look like here. He hasn't played much all year, and he actually played well several weeks ago. But he's now started 3 or 4 games and is missing a lot of tackles. It's something that did plague him on and off in Miami. The coverage is just a complete issue. So he's a good thumper. I don't mind him, but just needed to come down a little bit. Still living him up a little bit too much from his good days in Miami before they kind of gave up on him and traded him away here to the Raiders. Next up, the Baltimore Ravens. Plenty of movement here. So Eric Tomlinson has been a nice find for the Ravens. They had a severe lack of depth at tight end after Mark Andrews with Nick Boyle going down, and Tomlinson has filled into that blocking role. He's about 4 years removed from being a very solid blocking tight end for the New York Jets. But he's kind of back at that level, and he's going to be a nice piece for this heavy run game heading into the playoffs. And then these running backs. So Mark Ingram, kind of an interesting decision to make here. I hadn't moved him yet because he just hasn't played much. When he has played, he has not looked the same. Something weird going on with Mark Ingram. He's a healthy scratch this week. And he may have just, burned out from last year. He put everything he had into what was one of his best years of his career. But he's a guy that's had a ton of injuries throughout his career. He's got a lot of worn tread on those tires, and he could just be done. I think there's two outcomes here. Number one is, he's done. He's aging and on the fringe of retirement, just as it tends to happen with running backs at this age, or they are just saving him, and they want to rest him for the playoffs and hope that he can be what he was last year. But ultimately, it doesn't matter because Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins have been awesome here. Gus Edwards going up again. So 76 to a 78 here for Edwards. At 6'1", 240 pounds. I would say he's a different style. It's easy when these guys are 240-pound running backs to just lump them together with like Derrick Henry, A.J. Dillon, for example. Edwards a little different. He's more full steam ahead as far as early acceleration and burst. I don't know if he necessarily has the big play potential of guys like Dillon and Derrick Henry, and doesn't necessarily have the patience as a runner of like Derrick Henry, but just give him a gap to hit. And Gus Edwards is one of the premier guys in the league. He'll run through arm tackles. He is, frankly, a blur. He is just bizarrely fast at his size. Hard to know how a guy with this athletic traits took so long to get the opportunities he's getting. But the Gus bus is rolling in Baltimore heading into the playoffs. He's got real opportunity to have an immense breakout here and be considered a really high-end back. If he plays like this in playoff football and helps them win some playoff games. And then on this offensive line, they're getting some help as well from pieces that you weren't expecting. So obviously with the injury to Ronnie Stanley, this team had to figure out kind of on the fly what they wanted to do there. And they have now moved Orlando Brown to left tackle. They've plugged DJ Fluker in at right tackle after some other guys just did not work out there. So they've established some continuity with the tackle spot. And then that right guard spot has been iffy all season. And Ben Powers has stabilized that a little bit. Tyree Phillips, they've been trying to get him playing time all over the place after spending a third-round pick on him. And he just clearly is one of the worst offensive linemen. So they have some continuity now. I like what I've seen from Makari as well. Orlando Brown's been fine at left tackle. It's obviously not what they had last year, but it's much better than it was, week 7, week 8, where it was a real problem. It's an offensive line that's not going to get in this team's way as they head into the playoffs. And then for the defense, Justin Madubuike, he's coming into his own. I do think that these defensive tackles into 2021 these rookie defensive tackles will start to show up. Madubuike kind of being the first one to do it, but we're seeing it in Dallas as well with Neville Gallimore. There was a big cluster, and then the guy that Houston took as well comes to mind. Name's escaping me. But anyway, there's a big cluster of day 2 defensive tackles that were very young guys, frankly a little bit undersized. But in a COVID season with these rookies, it just might take some time for this defensive tackle class to come along. But Madubuike, no surprise with the coaching and the surrounding talent here in Baltimore, that he is the first guy to kind of really make a case and a name for himself as the best interior defensive lineman in the 2019 rookie class. Behind, obviously, your top guys. You had Derek Brown and Kinlaw, who were kind of a cut above of this other cluster. And then in the secondary, getting some pleasant surprises. So Anthony Averett, they've had some banged up guys in the secondary, but Anthony Averett's been buried here. But an uber athlete, a 4.3 40 guy out of Alabama, coached by the Baltimore Ravens, obviously going to pique your interest. Getting some playing time here and looks to have developed, most certainly. Just another piece for this defense. And then Chuck Clark, Deshaun Elliott, these two safeties playing very stable football. Neither of these guys are elite athletes, elite rangy guys, but they've just week to week have not been giving up big plays. They've been very steady. They're tackling well. They have a nice secondary. It's maybe not what it was last year necessarily, but Ravens are hot. We all know it. Excited to see them play some playoff football. All right, next we have the Pittsburgh Steelers. Some fallers here on the offensive line. It's not just Big Ben. It's not just the drops from the receivers. I hinted about this in the offseason. I was a little critical of the Steelers for not necessarily addressing the offensive line as they've let more and more guys go and kind of refused to invest heavily in the offensive line. With David DeCastro getting older here, he's pushing 31 years old. I think it's just, he's not a bad player. He's still a very stable pass protector, but not generating the push in the run game. This offensive line in general has not helped the run game. It's not that they have bad running backs necessarily. They don't have great guys. They don't have transcendent talents. But when you don't get good push, you're going to get left with one of the worst run games of football. And DeCastro has been a part of the problem there. And then Chukwuma Okorafor as well. He had some nice games in there after being named the starter, but that has fallen off. So he got a boost several weeks ago, and he's been a problem for this team for about 3 straight weeks. So the Steelers' offensive line is quietly a pretty large need for this team, as the good guys they do have are aging, and they have some warts as well, especially at that right tackle spot. It's not a bad offensive line, but it's certainly not what it once was. And then for the defense, you got Alex Highsmith really stepping up. This looks like a great pick for the Steelers coming out of Charlotte. Hard to know what you were going to get, especially as a rookie. But they've had to lean on him very heavily since Bud Dupree went down, and they're very different stylistically. Highsmith is not that game wrecker. He's going to be more of a splash plays kind of guy. But when he hits these speed rush moves that we saw, like the spin move that he put on last week against the Titans the Colts left tackle, the backup in there. But anyway, Highsmith looks like a high upside speed rusher for the Steelers and a nice pick. And then Minkah Fitzpatrick has just been honestly more steady than he was in his first year. The splash plays aren't necessarily there, but he's been more steady. He's been a better tackler, giving up less big plays. He's been a good all-around, and in general, he's going up because last year was the first year of him as a true free safety. So to see him continue to sustain success as well is big. I feel like people think I hate Minkah Fitzpatrick. I'm just not as high necessarily on him as some others, as saying he's the best free safety in the NFL. But I love his upside. I love his development track. He's still very young. This is only his second full season he's played free safety in his career. And he definitely looks like he is pushing to make a case for the best free safety in football. I'd still take Kevin Byard over him. I'd still take Jesse Bates in the AFC North over him. But Minkah definitely up there. Eddie Jackson as well deserves a shout out. But Minkah definitely right there in that convo. Houston Texans. Deshaun Watson's going to go up. If the Texans were any good, Deshaun would be in the MVP conversation. He's just been incredible. The most, I would say, different thing about Deshaun Watson is the turnover-worthy plays are way down. He is in the bottom 3 in percentage of turnover-worthy plays this season, which is surprising. He's been a guy that's made some mistakes, whether it's fumbling or the occasional bad decision in the passing game. But he's been sharp. He's played in rhythm. Very similar to when Matthew Stafford lost Calvin Johnson. Took a little bit of time, but showed that losing that go-to number 1 receiver kind of opened up the quarterback's field vision, spread the ball around a little more, and started becoming a better decision maker. And I think we're seeing that same effect with Deshaun Watson. Now, if you could then go and reacquire Deshaun or DeAndre Hopkins after that development track, that'd be nice, but that's not the case here. You're obviously excited about Deshaun Watson heading into 2021, and the Texans, you just can't count this team out of any game as long as he's your quarterback. And then they're getting these tight ends going. Darren Fells, Pharaoh Brown, Akins, and the other guy too, I can't remember his name, but the second-year player, Cahill Waring. They're like getting all 4 of these guys going. They're all different players, kind of producing in their own right. Darren Fells, kind of the steady hands guy. He's just a good go-to chain mover for Watson. He trusts him as that big-bodied target. I don't think it's a coincidence that he's had a nice year after Hopkins is gone, just to have that reliable, big-bodied, secure hands target to go to in contested situations. Fells has been that guy. Pharaoh Brown's come in. He's been a good blocker. He's a big-bodied guy. He's been a bit of a journeyman, but he's been a nice find. And then for the defense, Lonnie Johnson, I really did not like him as a corner prospect, and he sucked as a corner. But I did say that he could convert to safety and maybe have a chance, and he's been good there. He's been a really good tackler. He's showing that some of that range he has is there. He's never going to be Earl Thomas or anything, but a versatile safety. Kind of reminds me of Kareem Jackson a little bit, playing some of that do-it-all safety stuff. So Lonnie, although he doesn't have the athleticism of Kareem Jackson, but you get the point. Same role, and he's impressed. He's been a very secure tackler for this team as well. And then Keon Crossan, he is absolutely intriguing. He's a guy that I feel like Bill Belichick really hated himself for having to release Keon Crossan because he is so fast. But New England obviously has such depth in that corner spot, and I think that Belichick wished there was a way to keep Crossan in there to develop, because he's done that here in Houston. He has rare speed as a corner, and he's a guy that's shown to be a good special teamer. He's got the physicality, the toughness, and kind of, I don't want to say awareness necessarily, but the work ethic to know that I have to develop my game. I got to come up through special teams, earn roster spots that way, and eventually his number is going to get called. In the last 2 weeks, he's been a very solid corner, and I think they might have something here. We'll see over time how stable he can be, but that athleticism, it's just that's the kind of traits you want to gamble on, and he was not this player 2 years ago, but man, I would be excited about Keon Crossan and want to see him continue to get some opportunities into next year, even if he's not a full-time starter to start the year. Would not want to give up on this guy with the development track he's shown. I think he's got a real chance to be in that sort of, J.C. Jackson breath of undrafted corners with a ton of athletic potential that Bill Belichick liked. Yeah, man-heavy scheme guy, though. Not exactly a guy with route recognition that is a zone guy, but that's why he's good in Houston here. They do run a lot of man coverage or match zone, basically the same thing. Last team here, the Tennessee Titans. Nate Davis is going to go up again here. He and Lewis in Seattle, they're so oddly familiar. They're both 6'3", like 318 pounds. Quick get off, great run blockers who are miserable pass protectors. That's Nate Davis. You can see some of the issues show up in pass protection time and time again, but this is one of the best run games in the NFL, if not the best, and Nate Davis has been a part of that. And then for the defense, you're going to have some fallers here. You got to point some blame somewhere when your defense is playing like this. And Harold Landry absolutely deserves some of it. He just has not been an impact for this team. They do miss Jadeveon Clowney, believe it or not. But with Harold Landry out there, a guy with a lot of expectations, had a double-digit sack season last year and just hasn't been that guy. It was a complete non-factor, no pressures against Green Bay. He can't really convert speed to power. We say it so much, but when you're so one-dimensional as a pass rusher, you do at some point need to develop something else to your game, whether it's continued expansion on your pass rushing package or developing some of that power, putting on some play weight, and you're just not seeing it with Harold Landry. I still like him as a player, but he has not taken that next step, and frankly has taken a step back this year. And then David Long stepping up at linebacker, a very similar player to Jayon Brown, and almost emerging in a similar way. Jayon Brown in his second year kind of broke out with some impact pass rushing snaps. With these guys are oddly familiar linebackers. Might have two players here with David Long and Jayon Brown who have the fastest first step of pretty much any linebacker in the NFL. Just rare acceleration, and that shows as a pass rusher because you're basically a running back hitting a gap, and it doesn't matter if you're quote-unquote undersized like David Long and Jayon Brown are, both about 230 pounds, 5'11", 6-foot guys. When you're coming in with that much speed and that much acceleration, you're going to be an impactful blitzer. So Jayon Brown did the same thing. He wasn't the best run defender. He wasn't the best coverage guy, but he started to gain some of that confidence, making impact plays as a rusher, getting more playing time for that reason, and starting to develop. They've not paid Jayon Brown. He's a good player, but I think David Long, he could actually, be kind of that same player. They have their other guy in Rashaan Evans there, who they like as a run defender and the things he does as a leader for that defense. So something to keep an eye on if Jayon Brown is on his way out. Maybe they extended him and I missed that, but David Long, very similar player. And then Desmond King, I talked about this when they traded for him. Everyone was freaking out, like, how do you get Desmond King for a 6th-round pick? What a steal. The Titans' defense is saved. I kind of went the complete opposite there. I said, yes, he's an upgrade to what they have. They wish they still had Logan Ryan there in the slot as that good tackling run defender, and King has been that. He's been fine, but this is a guy that was, kind of an all-pro slot corner, Pro Bowler, regarded as a premier slot corner. on a team that ran almost exclusively zone coverage. Then you come to Tennessee where they're running man coverage about 35-40% of the time. That is not Desmond King's game. He is not comfortable with his back to the quarterback because he's not a good athlete. He just isn't. There's a lot of slot corners with better athleticism and agility than Desmond King. What makes Desmond King so great is his ability to see routes develop, to be there a step early, and frankly, read the quarterback's eyes. In this scheme in Tennessee, where they're running a lot of man coverage, a lot of match zone coverage, where he is asked to turn his head around and follow a receiver, he's not good in coverage in that department. So he's going to hit free agency. He's been a Band-Aid at slot corner. He hasn't necessarily been awful, but he needs to, Desmond King and his agent, need to recognize his skill set and go to a team like, say, Seattle or San Francisco, or a team like that that runs a ton of zone coverage where he can get back to being the best version of himself. Because I do think it's still in there. It's just a matter of scheme fit here with Tennessee, showing yet again why scheme fit is so important. All right, there is Studs and Duds. Wow, we were under an hour for this one, believe it or not. I hope you guys enjoyed. It was a lot of work this week to get this thing up there. If you are still sitting here listening to me, do consider donating to my work for this series, everything I do on YouTube, and for the roster itself. You can do that in multiple ways. My Venmo is Marcus-Whitman. You can PayPal me at paypal.me/TFGfootball. And of course, you can sign up on Patreon. Great time to do that with the Draft Insider package just around the corner. We're going to have prospect film breakdowns coming in just a matter of weeks there. So that's patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy. You can get exclusive content and show your support. So that's patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy. Thank you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your support. I appreciate you guys for watching, and we will see you for the next one. Cheers.